Hello world, I am Mrs. Louv, MD. Thank you so much for tuning in. In regard to everything that's going on, there's a lot of bickering between men and women, in particular within the community of those that are African descent, Native descent, Indigenous descent, what have you. I decided to go ahead and delve into this very relevant topic because it's something that needs to be really hashed out. A lot of times when we think about the gender wars, we tend to think about how living within the society that has really been geared around patriarchal understandings of things, we realize that there is a lack of balance. When you have matriarchy versus patriarchy, of course there's going to be friction because you're pitting one against the other. And when you truly realize, even from the biological standpoint of the different sexes, there is differences, and differences does not necessarily mean bad. Differences are good. Okay, and being that there isn't a balance, we see a lot of the symptoms of living within a pressurized society, which looks like distrust of self, also not wanting to really identify with each other because of the injustices, which results in self-inflicted evil that is relentlessly promoted. A lot of times these things are subtle, and for the most part what we're seeing now in society is very overt. And it's the possible orifices of society and the ideology that's really being pushed upon us. The indoctrination of suppressing the woman condones disharmony and distrust and disloyalty. Because even though a person may be a male, there's still a female aspect of him. When you think about, even when it comes to the biological components of each individual, there should be a balance of that masculinity and femininity. And when you have a suppression of the femininity, which looks like upholding promiscuous behavior, independence in a sense of not having value for the male counterpart, this creates imbalances, this creates destruction, and it really stands for the annihilation of a people if you're not able to really come into terms with the need for the balance of the masculine and the feminine. The loss of masculinity and femininity ultimately results in the loss of humanity. Men and women are not the same, and we are not designed to be the same. One cannot replace or substitute the other. One will be foolish to consider otherwise. Biology is the most basic, fundamental of life. Our gender, our atomical structure, and all of that is determined on a cellular level. So the DNA encoding that determines our physiological aspects pertaining to who we are is determined before birth, right? So the gender war is a weapon against us. It's against humanity. The magnitude of this war is far greater a threat, which can result in the obliteration of a race. Feminism, anti-sexuality are proponents, and they propagate and oftentimes instigate a war between men and women under the guise of equality. When you try to diminish one and uphold the other, it's not ever going to fully work. And we wonder why, at times people are wondering why there's so much hostility for each other. A lot of times people also are wondering why there's a huge amount of anxiety and depression when it comes to males or even females. But it's a lot of times because of the violence and destruction through the media, through the music industry, which promotes Black men to hate each other and to hate their reflection, which is other males that they see. They begin to even have an animosity against their own women. Now, with the overt push of prostitution, in the sense of artists such as Cardi B, Nicki Minaj, all these things do not symbolize strength for women. It symbolizes being in a very inferior place. When you are gravitating towards the most base inclinations of a person, that's not a place of power. Although they have incentivized these people and put them in positions where they may feel as if they are empowered because they may be able to afford Louis Vuitton or the latest vehicles and all that, when it really boils down to it, these people are suffering. They're, in essence, become slave to societal conditioning of debasing yourself. If you truly value your life and your future and integrity thereof, it's time to step up and realize that we are contributing to this disengagement of ourselves as a people and as an individual by de-escalating the projections from enemies that are putting these things out about the woman and of the man. We begin to empower ourselves and not continue to perpetuate the stigmas of what's going on in society as far as really suppressing the feminine and also suppressing the masculine in a sense, because the masculine energy is being suppressed in the sense that he feels he has been lied to and deceived to feel as if he doesn't need the woman. He doesn't need his own woman. And that is a lie, because you see it played out so often, time and time again, when the man is suppressed and the woman is suppressed and they are trying to do this thing that have a relationship, trying to coexist together. If you're not loving yourself, if you're not edifying yourself, you are taken away from yourself. So therefore you are subjugated to be in an inferior place. So in that sense, you begin to deteriorate the fabric of a culture and the integrity of a people by undermining the masculine and also undermining the feminine. This is something that not enough people are really bringing to the forefront. I hear a lot of infighting and back and forth, and we all need to realize that it is only fools that fight within a burning building. We have to realize that when you take the time to step outside of self and see how you contribute to the problems, take accountability, and realize that sometimes the instigator that has caused a rift between the sexes, a rift between man and woman, is people that benefit off of us being in an inferior place. Our place in society is a huge, we shape culture, we shape economics and so many things. And also it is more profitable for the black man, the black woman, for the African man, for the African woman, for the indigenous man, indigenous woman, whichever you feel more so resonates with you. It is more profitable for us to be in a level of disunity. All right. This is economical on so many levels. So by us being out of sync with each other, we are made vulnerable to outsiders abusing us and therefore being counterproductive. This is more so of a master-slave dynamic, and this is evidence of residues of slavery. When I think about that term, it makes me consider a lot of the teachings that I've listened to from Dr. Joel Pilgrim. She's somebody that has really put an emphasis on the need for balance and the natural need for a balance of the masculine and the feminine. All right? So if you really think about it, after all, we cannot exist without each other. The black man and the black woman, both, we need each other. And so it requires us to do the work in order to produce a happy environment, a healthy environment, and realizing that by giving into the stats, okay, the stats that say that marriages between black men and black women do not work, these are lies. And the reason why a lot of times we give into those lies that are pushed forth by media is because it seems like it's such an overwhelming task. But I want you to realize that it's possible. Relationships can be prosperous and long lasting, but it requires you to realize that there are instigators, there are enemies outside of the relationship that, for whatever reasons, for even it could be their own lack of understanding of the greater good that is having a healthy, balanced relationship for people. And there could be people outside of your relationship that tend to, affect that. So it's important that you honor your relationships and you realize that there are solutions. Get out of that burning building, per se. So when I say the burning building, for instance, if there is a fire, all right, so the phrase that I keep referring to about is foolish for people to argue in a burning building. Literally, if you think about it, if there is a fire, right, somebody has set your house on fire, and in the midst of all that, you decide that, you must have did it, blah, 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 blah. You begin nagging at him, and then he's nagging at you. Oh, you did it, blah, blah, you didn't do this. And during this whole process, you're fighting, and the person that's on the outside of the building that actually set it on fire is laughing and rejoicing in the fact that you didn't realize that your building is on fire. Neither one of you had anything to do with it, but you both are taking it out on each other. And you both are going to go down in flames if you don't get out of the burning building. So here are some solutions when it comes to dealing with relationships as someone of African descent, of indigenous native descent, and realizing that your counterpart is complementary to you. And I think of the term complementarity when it comes to Baba Baruti and his wife Ya Baruti. They have this excellent book called Complementarity. I haven't been able to really read it yet, but I've seen lectures that they have really talked about the need for balance and realizing that enemies that's outside of us are putting things in place to cause us to be in disharmony. So by realizing that you're not each other's enemy, no matter how much society tries to put that out there, that we are each other's rescue. We are our own rescues first, and we are rescues to each other, but it requires us to think logically and think about the end goal when it comes to successful, happy relationships. So here's a few solutions. Communication. Negative comments about each other has to discontinue. Men and women being passive aggressive, projecting hurt and pain that other people have done to each other. We have to realize that terms such as identifying men as dogs or women as bitches or deadbeats or dusty, all of these things are tools. Hold on just a minute. All these things are tools that have been utilized for us to be in disharmony. And these things have happened for centuries. I'm not sure why this isn't going off, but yeah. So these are things that have been utilized against us for centuries because it is profitable to keep us in a level of disharmony. All right. So another thing, forgiveness. If you can conceive forgiving the enemy per se, instead, extend that forgiveness to yourself and to your counterpart, to your masculine. All right? Forgiveness of self and self-awareness and accountability is important because we have to realize that at times, especially if when you think about just how society really tries to utilize feminism and utilize that against each other as a wedge, the whole divide and conquer thing. And it's something that has been going on for a long time. Even when we think back to each ancient Kemet, when we think about Nefertari, Nefertari, yeah, I'm saying the right one, Nefertari and King Ramses, okay? So although they remained together, there was division in between their relationship due to them both fraternizing with Greeks outside of them. All right. And so that's another story that we can get into at a later time. But this is a ploy of the enemy to speak harshly about the man and then take the man aside and speak harshly about the woman, and it causes division. And we wonder why relationships within our communities do not last as long or are not healthy, and it's because we allow others to infringe their ideas and their sickness and perversions onto each other. So it's important to take the time to really deconstruct what it is that you really are fighting against, because you're not each other's enemies. Begin to make healthy decisions when it comes to communication. And as women, although you may have something you want to say to your masculine, to your man, realize that it's a way you have to come to him. You have to be respectful, and sometimes it's best to even be silent. Men operate differently than women, and it's not a weakness, it's not anything negative per se, but it's just that they process things differently than women do. All right, so I want to go on to this other point as far as a solution. Confronting the past is a huge step into the right direction by really accessing your memory bank and confronting the past, even the past issues such as things that stem from us being enslaved and a lot of the traumas that we went through. When you really are able to, I don't know how to get that off. Whatever. When you really are able to unpack what has happened to us for generations, you begin to feel more so of a bond with your own people, because sometimes we feel, and I've even heard people talk about blaming the man for not getting us out of the situation of being enslaved. You're dealing with a real enemy here. So it's not something that you can just put on the opposite sex. Likewise, he could be feeling the same way about you. And although it is the man's position to provide and protect, when you're living in an oppressive society and you're dealing with an enemy that will do something as grotesque as to gut a pregnant woman and eat the baby in front of her and other people, think logically. Like, how do you combat a type of enemy like that other than to really love yourselves and do the best that you can to defeat that enemy together? All right, so confronting the past is vital in the spiritual journey of healing, and it provides an inner security. And as women, of course, things that we have been through, a lot of times we want to suppress them and not really deal with them because they're so painful. But I invite you to actually, when you're feeling pain about something that has happened to you, and sometimes there's things that may come up that has happened within your family. It could be a generational pain and trauma that resurfaces. And even on a spiritual level, a lot of times traumas may resurface within your life is because you're called to heal those things. You have to tap into inner wisdom and strength, all right, to actually move forward. Things such as colorism, ill treatment, these are all byproducts of being within a racialized society. That's just what it is. And so when you notice those things are within your home, instead of turning a blind eye to it, call it out. Work on it. Ask, why do you say that? If you hear your children say something that may be a little off, or even if you say something, challenge that. Challenge why those things come up, because a lot of times, like I mentioned, those things come up so that you could heal from them and be a better person. All right, so researching positive details of our ancestors gives you power and resiliency. So I know a lot of times we don't really want to focus on a lot of traumatic events understandably, but those things have to be dealt with. But a counteractive measure is to focus on a lot of the great things that we have achieved and have done, which there has been so many. We have created so many different things. We have survived so many different things. And it's just a testament to our strength and ability to heal and to thrive. And, you know, it's something that needs to be highlighted and to have at the forefront of your mind, you know, because we are expected in some instances to not make it as couples. And as somebody that has been married for 18 years, we've been together for 22, 23 years, 24 years, something to that effect. It's important to constantly keep evolving. And sometimes in relationships, you have to realize that not everybody is always going to be on even keel. Sometimes your man may be a little weaker than you in a sense when it comes to emotional things. And as a woman, you know, we are more in tune with our emotions. That's just how it is, intuitive wise. And so you have to balance that out. Be there for your man when he's going through things, and likewise when the when your woman is going through things, be things for her, be understanding, and realize that through the process of healing, as we extend that love and healing to each other, we can continue to thrive in our relationships and make it. You know, love is beautiful and marriage is beautiful, and we have to realize that we're not each other's enemies, okay? That's something I definitely like to harp on, because a lot of times it's put into that type of stigmatized talking points within the media. And furthermore, first and foremost, which I should have said this in the beginning, is definitely tune out of negative input when it comes to people, keeping people out of your relationship. And although there's times where you want to really vent or discuss things with someone, do so with a qualified professional or someone that's unbiased, a spiritual consultant or what have you. Do so with somebody that is outside of your circle in a professional environment, so that you're able to get proper feedback, get a sounding board for what you're going through, opposed to putting your personal business out to others that sometimes are so clouded by their own inadequacies and their own pain that they may give you inaccurate information. All right, so you know, just take the time to really invest in yourself, invest in your relationships, and watch them really flourish. You know, it's possible and it can be done. It takes time, but it takes you to be really committed to the process. So just to keep you in mind, I am available as a spiritual alchemist consultant. So painful memories are to be uncovered, or they will continue to fester and poison your current relationships. And we realize too, and I've, you know, dealt with other women through consultations where they have expressed that a lot of the traumas that they have been through within their relationships is things they've noticed with their parents, and it feels like they're continuing a cycle. And truly that could be a part of it, because sometimes when you're not healing those things, they will constantly come up, especially if you're asking for growth. You'll notice those things keep coming up, or certain people keep coming into your life because it's something in you that needs to be healed. It could be a level of codependency. It could be feeling insecure. It could be you know, taking on a lot of hurt. Okay, and so just realize that you have the power to really restore the principles of Mayat and have a heaven-like experience on earth. Yes, it is possible, and I'm a living testimony. And not to say that my relationship has always been a cakewalk. Of course, we have gone through trials and tribulations, but will you stand the test of time? It's truth. And as we know, there's a lot of attacks against the black woman and the black man in particular. And just find that, just look within yourself during these moments and realize that if you weren't really If your man wasn't truly so powerful, why would there constantly be attacks against him? So, I have sons as well. So I just want you to understand that it's so important to realize the true power it is in being a woman and understanding that you have the ability to connect to different realms other than a man can, and that's just how it is when it comes from a spiritual standpoint. So utilize your spirituality in a positive mode. Speak life into your situation, even if you're in a relationship, a marriage, and you feel like things aren't going your way. Operate within your femininity. Realize that you can call upon the type of love that you want. It may take time. It may take you to really dig a little deeper when it comes to dealing with your own pain, but realize that it's possible and love always wins. So until next time, definitely vibe higher and thrive. I am Mrs. Louv, MD, 1111 Awakening. Nakupenda, Ashe.